Hello, glad to have you here. This is from the CBN, bringing you weekly reports and expert analysis of the actions, policies, and economic initiatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I'm Uliyemisi Dada. It's now more than 2 weeks since the Central Bank of Nigeria announced it will no longer supply foreign exchange to bureau de change operators in the country in an effort to fix the forex market and clamp down on the unlawful activities of BDCs. Deposit money banks have set up dedicated teller points for forex transactions at all their branches nationwide to cater to legitimate forex needs of genuine customers. In this episode, we continue with the assessment of the policy and the forex market in Nigeria in general from where we stopped last time, plus news updates from the Central Bank of Nigeria this week. Stay with us. The Central Bank of Nigeria has developed the draft guidelines for licensing and regulation of credit guarantee companies (CGCs) in Nigeria in furtherance of its efforts at improving access to lending for micro, small and medium-scale enterprises. The guidelines, which will provide a regulatory basis for the operations of credit guarantee companies in Nigeria, seeks to ultimately reduce credit risk, stimulate lower interest rates on loan, and complement other initiatives of regulatory authorities. The CBN Financial Policy and Regulation Department, in a circular to banks, other financial institutions, and stakeholders in the financial services industry, said the exposure draft of the guidelines was issued for comments and observations within 3 weeks. The document has been made available on its website at www.cbn.gov.ng, while feedback can be addressed to the Director, Financial Policy and Regulation Department, and soft copies forwarded to the email address Policy and Regulation Division at cbn.gov.ng. The Bankers Committee has disclosed that post-no debit order will be placed on the accounts of customers who use fraudulent means such as fraudulent documentations to access foreign exchange, besides reporting them to the Central Bank of Nigeria. The committee also reviewed that it has collaborated with the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System to create a portal where information on forex sales can be shared real-time to help check arbitrage and aid the digitization process of buying forex for invisibles. The Group Managing Director of GT Bank, Mr. Segun Agbaje, during a virtual press briefing Thursday, noted that the new forex policy of the CBN is working and that it has the full support of all the banks. Similarly, the Bankers Committee said work has started in earnest on the rehabilitation of the National Arts Theatre Complex, Igomu, for the takeoff of the Creative Industry Hub. The Group MD of Access Bank PLC, Mr. Herbert Wigwe, confirmed that by next month, most of the contracts would have been awarded, while the project would be concluded by next year, December. The Creative Industry Park, when completed, is expected to boost job creation, tourism, and help young Nigerians in the creative industry fulfill their dreams. Promising to deliver a world-class hub that is comparable to the best that can be found anywhere on the globe, the Bankers Committee said preference would be given to indigenous contractors. The Central Bank of Nigeria held an enlightenment and interactive session with the organized labor and civil society in the South-South zone of the country last weekend in Calabar, Cross River State. The CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, who was represented at the event by the Acting Director, Corporate Communications Department, Mr. Osita Nwanisobi, disclosed that part of the bank's 5-year policy thrust include achieving double-digit economic growth and single-digit inflation rate within the next 3 years. Emefiele told labor leaders present at the interactive session that the various intervention programs of the Apex Bank are well thought out to help grow the economy and stabilize the financial system. He added that projections of a double-digit economic growth before or by 2024 looks ambitious, especially with the realities on ground, but that the bank is determined and asks for the support and participation of all.
Oh, I see. Just hold on in that case. Let me call out my PIN. It is 41...
Uncle, please stop.
Stop what?
You're giving someone else your personal identification number PIN?
not someone else. It's from my bank.
Please hang up, Uncle. That's a fraudster.
That's not true. But they call out my full name. I am sure this is from my bank.
Uncle, no bank is ever going to call you to ask for your personal identification number, PIN, your mobile banking password, or your card verification code, CVC.
But it sounded so genuine.
Yes, hackers and fraudsters always sound genuine. But please, Uncle, don't fall for their bait. Don't respond to any phony emails, text message, SMS, and don't click on any link you're not sure of.
Even if they call your date of birth or your BVN, don't give them your security details.
If you suspect any issue with your account, please go to your bank.
Oh, I see.
This message is from the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is from the CBN, bringing you weekly reports and expert analysis of the actions, policies, and economic initiatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's time to bring you the concluding part of our interview with a regular media commentator on the economy, capital market, and the banking industry, who, among other things, is the MD CEO, Cowry Asset Management Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, as we assess the recent forex policy of the CBN and Nigeria's forex market in general. Stay tuned.
We had an economic environment, where the demand for foreign exchange was below the supply of foreign exchange at that time. And a couple of things were happening. One, we had an oil boom in the 70s, which boosted our reserve and boosted our foreign exchange earnings. Two, we had some level of industrialization, which meant a couple of things were produced locally and we didn't need to import them. Textiles were largely produced locally. We had vehicle assembly plants in the country. We had several industries that were operating effectively, and so the demand for imported items were not as high as it is today. Today, we have seen going through a phase of deindustrialization. So where most of the industries are closed. I'm not sure if there's any textile factory working today. Yeah. So there's no, okay, maybe a few assembly plants have come up, but not as much as when you had then, where virtually all the vehicles that are driven here were locally assembled. So you had several industries that were providing consumer goods in the country that are no longer functioning. So you've seen a shift away from local production to importation. Two, we had, by the time I checked that at 2000, the population of this country was about 120 million. Today we are 206 million. That population has not led to an increase in productivity or production. What we are seeing is an increase in consumption, because with a larger population, there's a minimum level of food and other items you will consume. So over time, we've seen consistent increase in consumption without commensurate increase in production. And unfortunately, we got to the point where even our balance of trade has turned negative, which means the value of goods and services we sell, of goods we export, is now less than the value of goods we import, which wasn't the case until just about 2 years ago. So these are factors that are putting pressure on the reserve and putting pressure on foreign exchange. Until we address them, we are not going to correct that. And which why I say, look, the focus should be, what should they do in the medium to long term that will drastically change the structure of the Nigerian economy so that foreign exchange will improve. And if of the curve, I can think, first we need to do the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting will come in the form of addressing infrastructural deficit. And if you don't have an efficient infrastructure, you cannot be a productive economy. And even if you produce, you're not going to produce at a cost that's comparative to the cost of goods produced elsewhere in the world. So you can't compete in the global export market. Unlike what we used to have in the past, where local production cost was commensurate with what of the local production cost elsewhere. So even if we're not exporting, imported goods were not cheaper than goods that were produced locally. We don't have that situation today. Whatever you produce here in Nigeria and you import a similar product imported into the country will land cheaper, because by the time you pay for power supply, pay for your transportation, pay for gas and water, you paid for security and everything, you are going to end up with a production unit cost that's higher than what the landing cost of the imported goods would be. So we've seen situation where we cannot produce for consumption, so we're importing. So we need to address that. And to address that, the first thing is you have to build infrastructure, which you have to be a medium to long-term plan. Then we need to look at our policies. There should be policies that we have to be involved to focus on certain sectors of the economy, certain what you may call industrial sectors where we have competitive advantage. We've done that successfully in the cement industry. There are several other product value chains we can improve and be in position to, at the minimum, meet local demand. If we can do it in cement, we can also do it in, I think we tried to do something in cassava. I don't think it was pushed to successfully, and the current government is pushing for rice. So we need to look at all those things, particularly those commodities where we have some level of competitive advantage because they can grow very well here. And then we improve on our production value chain. Take for instance the issue of rice I mentioned. Today, the productivity of rice in the country is far below what it is in Thailand. So it then means that the average cost of producing rice is still higher than what is in Thailand. Now that's why if you don't put the barriers, by the time if you open the borders, the Thailand rice or any of those imported rice will have completely drive away the Nigerian market. So, but the key thing is you can put those barriers and over time improve the productivity of those products so that they can compete. It's only when they compete they can export. You must compete in terms of quality and in terms of cost. So that's the first thing. And then the second aspect is that we need to look at our monetary policy environment and come up with structure that will encourage capital importation into the country, particularly even the short end of the market. If you look at the reports recently, we've seen successively decline in capital importation. In fact, we're even seeing exit of foreign portfolio investment from the country. I understand about 111 billion left the country in the first half of the year from the capital market, from the equities market. So that we need to reverse, because that, if you have a strong capital importation, if you have a strong portfolio investment, it cushions or it smoothens fluctuations you will have in your foreign exchange earnings. And we need to restore that. To restore that, we need to address the issue of foreign portfolio investors who are trying to exit the market and are not able to access forex to exit. And my approach had been, it's what they call show of force. And I think the central bank should adopt a show of force. The show of force will say, okay, total amount that is outstanding is 3 billion or 4 billion. We pay 2 billion. And then if you pay 2 billion, you create an impression you have the capacity to pay the balance of 2 billion. And that will restore confidence, because those who are trapped will see, these people are paying. So they are in a strong liquidity position. Even if they know you understand, but they think your policies have changed, that you are meeting all demands. Because the key thing is that if people who have invested in the country in local currency instruments cannot repatriate their money, you don't expect anybody to come in. So we need to address that in the short term, at least to restore, because our returns on our fixed income instruments are still strong. And then we need to get to a point where we have some level of relative stability in the FX rate. Because wide fluctuation in FX rate will scare away foreign investors. The simple is that if you come in and make 10% return on your instrument and they have a 15% devaluation of the currency, you have lost 5%. So we need to achieve some level of stability in FX rate and meet the demands of foreign portfolio investors who are currently trapped. If you do that, you will restore liquidity in the short end of the market, and that will help smoothen the fluctuation you are having and balance of trade. And while you work on the medium to long term strategy to improve overall foreign exchange earnings or slow down on foreign exchange demands. Because if you produce efficiently locally and you have substitution of those products we have imported, that will reduce demand. One of the areas we can look at immediately, and I've forgotten this word, of course, the current president has said repeatedly that he's not interested in removing the subsidy. If we don't address the subsidy issue, we're not going to have local production of local refining of petroleum products, unless we continue to bank on Dangote refinery. But we should have multiple refineries in the country, given that we produce good quality crude. But we can't have that unless we have the issue of subsidy addressed. Even when Dangote begins to export to Nigeria or sell to Nigeria, that means they will still have to say to the federal government, because as long as they have subsidy, their cost of production will be higher than the pump price of fuel. So they will only have to say to the federal government, who will now sell to local marketers. And I don't think that is the way to go if we really want to address the core problem we have in the country.
All right, I wouldn't want us to dabble into the issue of subsidy removal at this time because that is another kettle of fish. But to wrap up this session, you have mentioned the issue of infrastructure, industrialization, monetary policy instruments, among other things, as being necessary to reverse the trend of shortage of forex. Now, if you look at the policies and the actions of the Central Bank of Nigeria, especially under the present governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, talking about infrastructure. At the last MPC meeting, he even announced, because there was a question raised as to, he promised that Infraco, the infrastructure company that he proposed and that the federal government has approved, will be taken off shortly, was supposed to take off second quarter, but he assured that it will be taken off third quarter. A lot of things have been put in place. Executives have been appointed here and there for Infraco, which, if my memory serves me right, is going to be a 14 trillion naira company to address infrastructure deficit in Nigeria. If we look at that, we will say the CBN is in the right direction. And if we talk about industrialization, look at the effort, the sugar plan that is encouraging backward integration. And if you look at, you've mentioned the issue of rice and other agricultural value chain and the efforts that have been put in and the credits that have been pumped into ensuring that Nigeria can eat what we produce and produce what we eat. And besides all that, if you look at other sectors, even the SME, a lot have been invested in that. If you look at the cotton and textile industry, the central bank has invested so much by way of giving credit to key stakeholders in that sector, the growers of the cotton, the ginneries, and people who are supposed to be the ones, the textile mills and all that. We're supposed to be wearing made in Nigeria textile as we speak, but probably the time frame is still, maybe it's still short to see the result. But this is where I'm going. Apart from all this effort that the CBN is putting in, what should be the role of other players in the Nigerian economy? Is it, you know, sometimes you look at these issues and sometimes you talk about the saboteurs who do not really want some of these things to work, you know. So what should be the responsibility of other key players?
Let me tell you, you know, when we talk of policy environment, we talk about the monetary policy and the fiscal policies. You have mentioned several things the monetary authorities are doing, including some of them actually stepping into the space of the fiscal authorities, because the fiscal authorities, and with the central bank governor has said repeatedly at the MPC announcements, that the fiscal authority needs to step up their game. I just mentioned the issue of subsidy, which is a fiscal policy issue. I have not even mentioned the issue of insecurity, which is a fiscal policy issue. These are some of the things. The key thing is that the fiscal authority needs to step up to speed. The issues coming up with trade policy that will address what is important, what tariffs to impose on goods and services, what incentives to grant to a sector that you want to stimulate, is going to come from fiscal authorities. The cement transformation did not come from monetary policies. And you did mention the issue of the textile industry. You observe that none of those textile industries have come up because funding is one of the multiple problems they have. So if you address one problem that you have, it's a necessary but not sufficient condition for them to come up or to recover. Right? Providing them funding is a necessary but not sufficient condition for them to be activated. Those other factors have to address. Are they getting power supply? So where are they going to fire the equipment? Are they going to fire the equipment through diesel? Okay, so some of these factors. Okay, when you talk of growing cottons, can the farmers still get to their farms now that Boko Haram and the bandits have displaced them? So these are factors you need to address, and they're going to come from the fiscal authorities. So the key the answer to your question is we need the fiscal authorities to step up to speed. When we talk of sabotage, I did mention to you that you do not sabotage what is in abundance. People only cut corners where there is scarcity. Nobody will go to a stream and steal a cup of water. You understand what I'm saying? It's only when there's no available water that people will steal it. The key thing with this economy used to be very buoyant, accommodated everybody. We had job creation. Nigerians were returning home from diaspora. They wanted to relocate back to the country. So what changed? It's all about the policy environment. And I think the call, the narrative today should be, let the fiscal authorities evolve appropriate economic policies that will support what the monetarists are doing. If we do not do that, you're going to see a situation where a one-legged person is playing football, but football is played with two legs. So you can imagine the number of goals the person can score when you have a goalkeeper with able-bodied goalkeeper at the post. So that's the challenge we have. And like I said, I'm not the first person to say it. The central bank governor has said it repeatedly. I think the government need to step up to speed. They need to focus on a few sectors of the economy, look for the appropriate incentives to support this economy. They even talk of the power supply. The power reform took place when more than 10 years ago. We're still battling with barely 4,000 megawatts of power generation and distribution. We've not moved the needle. So here in my office, I have 2 generators. At home, I have 2 generators. My facility in Oron, I have 3 generators. So, and you have to buy diesel. Diesel is doing about 290 naira per liter now. So what are you producing that if you're buying diesel and you're running to 5-hour operation that you can be profitable? We need to address those basic things. There's a limit. Central Bank has granted multiple accommodations to the power sector reform, but there has to be policy shock that will address the power sector deficit or the challenges we have in the power sector. It's not the central bank issue. Central bank is even beyond what it should do. But if the other leg is not addressing the issues, and when you talk of the fiscal authorities, the problem with fiscal authorities, they have paucity of resources. If you look at, for instance, last year's budget performance, in 2020, total federal government revenue as of November was 3.47 trillion naira. 3.1 trillion naira was used to service debt, leaving only about 300 billion at the end of November last year. So that left government with almost nothing. So the government had to borrow to pay salary, because that same period, federal government, the economy spent about 4 trillion naira. So, or the 4 trillion naira they spent, simply they borrowed about 3.7 trillion naira to pay salaries and wages and other expenses. With such huge revenue shortfall, you can now understand why I keep going back to the fact that we don't have 3 trillion naira to burn on subsidy, because that's what we're doing. Because if you cut down subsidy, you will cut down consumption of petroleum products, which you cut down import and save more foreign exchange.
Well, which will have ripple effect in the economy.
In the first place, there are wastages that are currently built into any subsidized product. If you are consuming a product at a price that is below its value, you are not going to treat that product with some level of respect. So you see people buy very big vehicles, gas-consuming vehicles, and drive around. If you allow the market force to determine the price of petrol, people will cut down on their consumption. The consumption will go down, and the amount we are spending on importation of petrol will come down drastically. I'm not sure we're going to spend more than 35% of what we're currently spending, which will lead to what? The consumption of foreign exchange. That amount could go into other critical factors, infrastructure, some of the infrastructure we're discussing. And you could be surprised.
But in all of this, are we considering the masses? Those who can barely afford 3 square meters, but who still want to run, I better pass my neighbor generator at night when there's no light for fun.
You know, that's the funny thing about it. Take for instance, you have a person who is running, I better pass my neighbor. He buys fuel at 162 naira to a liter. He runs the generator from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. when he goes to bed. And he sweats all through the night. And you're telling the guys, you know what? I'm going to increase the price of this fuel. You will not even have money to run it for the 2 hours. But I'm going to use it to strengthen our transmission grid, so I can wheel out 7,000 megawatts of power.
But that is if that man is assured that that fund will be expended in the appropriate place.
Yeah, but we're in a situation where, out of suspicion that they won't be expended, we're now in a hole, and we remain in a hole. So we're not even given any second chance to try whether this option will even work. Because the situation we found ourselves, we're in a bind. Under the current fiscal arrangement, we're not going to see infrastructure development in the country. We're not going to see the critical investment in healthcare, education. We're seeing deterioration in all aspects of human engagement in Nigeria because the government doesn't have the resources. You saw our performance in the Olympics, and when we were screaming, I said, what were you expecting? How much was voted to train the athletes? A poor country cannot do well in any facet of human endeavor, be it science, literature, education, engineering, because we need investment. We need to put in resources there. We don't have the resources. We are blowing it on consumption of petroleum products, which we cannot hold on to. If we take the pain of taking out the subsidy, of course, that's not a conversation here, but
exactly.
The key thing is this. We put that money in infrastructure. We are going to catalyze economic activity to the point that the man who was earning 30,000 naira will begin to earn 100,000 naira and does not even need a generator.
Mr. Johnson Chukwu, I'm tempted to go on and on and on because it's always a delight talking to you. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
And thank you for having me.
And that's all this week from the CBN. Check out the website of the Central Bank of Nigeria using www.cbn.gov.ng to learn more about the various economic intervention schemes of the bank, or locate the CBN branch office in your state for further guidance. You can call the toll-free line of the CBN contact center using the phone line below for your valid complaints. And keep sending your comments and contributions to the email address from the cbn@gmail.com. Follow us on the social media for updates and uploaded episodes of the program. Join us again next time. I am William Izidada. Stay safe. Bye for now.